Well, alright, welcome back to As It Should Be. Paul Bertolino here in the world-famous As It Should Be studios. And, well, it's Paulie's birthday. It's Paulie's birthday. Yeah, and, no, not this Paul. The Paul. Paul McCartney. It's Paul McCartney's birthday. Paul McCartney is 80. And to celebrate, I am here to do a very special Ranking the Albums video. And this time I am going to be doing the entire discography of Paul McCartney. From McCartney to McCartney 3. That's right. I'm not doing, you know how I usually roll. You would think, oh, he's going to do McCartney, he's just going to do the 70s albums. Nope. Everything. From 1970s McCartney to 2020s McCartney 3. I'm ranking everything. Now, granted, I'm not going to do absolutely everything. Like, Liverpool Oratorio's not going to be there, and, Twin Freaks and stuff like that. Family Way, that's not going to be there. All his proper studio albums. I am going to leave out the covers albums, like Kisses on the Buttocks, and, the Russian album, I'm leaving that out, but I'm going to include Run Devil Run because it has three, well, one, it's a really great record, and two, it has 3 original songs on it, and it's just like, it kind of teeters on that edge. I decided to include it, and I'm also going to include the Fireman Electric Arguments, because I don't care what it says on the cover, that's a Paul McCartney record, and I think you would agree too. Stuff like, obviously I said Family Way, but also Give My Regards to Broad Street, not including that. We're not including any live albums or any of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, there we go. Now, before I get into this, the way I rank these albums is just how I personally feel about them. I'm not doing this like, technical, like this is technically, objectively a better record than that. That's out the window. This is from my heart, man. This is how I personally, my enjoyment of these records. Okay? There are going to be records that are technically or objectively, like I said, not as good as other records that are going to be higher on the list, just because I like them more. And that's just, that's all there is to it, man. Alright, so better get at it. I have like 20, how many do I have? I have 24 records. I'm ranking 24 albums, and I want to get through them in a good amount of time, so this isn't a 2-hour video. So here we go. Okay, it's coming to number 24, McCartney 3. Yeah, McCartney 3 I have at the very bottom. Now, fear not, this isn't going to be one of those situations where I just have all the latest albums at the bottom. Really, honestly, most of the albums that he's done since Flaming Pie rate pretty high for me. I just don't really like this album that much. I've tried, and honestly, I keep going back to it. I kept going back to it when I was doing these rankings, kind of looking for something to really kind of make it all gel for me, to suddenly make it click, and it just hasn't yet. It could one day, but at this point, it really just hasn't. I realize that these McCartney albums, 1, 2, and 3, by their nature, have a tendency to be a bit slipshod. This one actually is the least slipshod of the 3. I mean, the first one and the second one being, much more so. This one is a lot more thought out, I feel like, and the songs are a bit more fully realized, and it's more of a collection of songs than the other 2. But it's a whole. I don't really like the songs that much. And in the case of some of the songs that I do like better, they're really, really, really bogged down, or they're really, really hurt by McCartney's voice. As we all know, his voice has been on decline for years now, and I feel like it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And it's the worst I've heard it yet on this album. It was getting it was walking that line of being able to actually tolerate on Egypt Station, but on this one, I feel like it's kind of past. It's like it's at the point of no return. It's on one hand, so I kind of a little bit fear for future albums. I'm ready for them. I want them to make more albums because who knows what'll happen. But and okay, so everybody knows, this album came out in December 2020, and that McCartney recorded this while we were on lockdown. During like the worst days of the COVID thing. He was sitting at home like everybody else was, and he needed something to do, so he started recording songs, and before long he realized he was making McCartney 3, and here we are. And I know a lot of us were really excited when this came out, and I was certainly one of them. And I don't know, but just so far it's not really It's not doing it for me. Sorry, guys. I know a lot of people seem to like this album, but I don't. My favorite tracks: Lavatory Lil, Deep Deep Feeling. Women and Wives would be really actually a great track, but his voice is probably the worst on that song out of anything on the album. So I don't know, man. Maybe one day I'll find my way with this, but as it stands, it's at the bottom of the list. Okay, it's coming in number 23. It's going to be a very controversial pick. You guys are going to be tearing your hair out. You guys are going to be leaving nasty comments and everything because you're going to disagree with me. Well, Flowers in the Dirt. Yes, I have Flowers in the Dirt at merely number 23. Honestly, for me personally, this is easily his most overrated album. Everybody seems to love this record. I mean, everybody. I swear, everybody's got this thing probably top 5, it seems like. And I just don't like it. The thing is that I'm not really that. The songs seem like they might be okay. And maybe they're probably a lot better than I realize they are. But the sound of the record, the production of the record, that 1989, just slick, just antiseptic, that terrible snare sound, it's just, I'm not into it. I can't get into it. Now, this came out in June 1989, and I don't know. See, now I feel like Paul went through kind of like this desperate period throughout the 80s where he was trying to find another John. After John died, initially, he got Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson kind of filled that spot for a while, and that went pretty well. I mean, the songs he did with Michael Jackson are pretty good. And then you have Eric Stewart, who kind of filled that spot, and then late 80s, he tried it with Elvis Costello. And I think everybody loves the idea of that on paper, and everybody seemed to like it in actuality. I was intrigued, but I don't know. I feel like he sounds like, I'm kind of reading notes here. It has a hodgepodge of producers, and I just feel like he sounds like past it dad, trying really desperately to navigate his way through the 80s, like a period that he has no real connection to. He just like that he feels like he has to do to stay current, you know what I mean? And I picture him performing these songs with a sweater tied around his neck, playing tennis. That's just kind of the vibe that these records have, these records. Well, this record, and another one that I'm going to mention that's, coming up pretty soon. Yeah, I can't get into it. My favorite tracks, though, I do have some favorite tracks. Distractions, We Got Married, Put It There, and Figure of Eight. I like those tracks. I don't love them, but I think those are pretty good tracks. I think they would be better with different production, but they are not bad at all. I really don't like Rough Ride, and I don't like You Want Her To. I actually really can't stand Elvis Costello's call and response vocal with Paul. I feel like he's just sort of, like it's gratuitous, like he's just in there to be in there. Like everybody go, oh look, Elvis Costello's here. It doesn't really add anything to the song. I don't think it's, I don't know. I actually initially had this record at the very bottom. Yes, I had it last, even below McCartney 3. And the thing is that I keep going back to it, trying to find my way with it. And when I went back and listened to it right before I started making this video, I actually switched it. I actually brought it up a notch and realized it's not quite as bad as it sounded to me, 3 days ago when I was first deciding these things. And so who knows? Maybe it'll climb a little bit, but it's never going to go high. I can't imagine it's ever going to go. It's always going to be towards the bottom of the list. It's just not my bag, man. I know you probably disagree with me. I'm sure you do, but here's some food for thought. I also disagree with you. Anyway, that's that. Flowers in the Dirt. Okay, it's coming in number 22, Off the Ground. Yeah, Off the Ground. Now, in my mind, I kind of pair this up. I feel like this pairs up really well with Flowers in the Dirt, which I don't like that much. And this one, I think I like it just a little bit more, and it kind of doesn't make sense. Like, I feel like I should like Flowers in the Dirt, but I think that's more like just because everybody likes Flowers in the Dirt. So I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be some reason why I should like Flowers in the Dirt more, but I don't. Going through it, I don't like this album much, but I'll give it just a little hair above Flowers in the Dirt. Now, this record is just, it's the production and the overall vibe of the album is just so milquetoast and lacking any sort of edge. And it has that early 90s, 80s hangover sound. I don't know about you. I think probably not as many people are into this record as Flowers in the Dirt, but there's definitely going to be a bunch of people in here telling me I'm crazy for putting this album so low, but I don't know what to tell you. Now, there are songs I like, though. I mean, I like Golden Earth Girl. It's possibly the best on the album. I like Mistress and Maid. That's not bad. Biker Like an Icon is pretty decent. Lovers That Never Were. That change into the chorus is really great. Wine Dark Open Sea has little moments that I really like, and Come On People is a relatively epic closer. I kind of like those tracks, but in the end, overall, it's just a little, I don't know, it's just uneventful and just sort of, it's just, like I said, it's just kind of milquetoast, and it's still kind of late 80s, even though it's 1993, and I don't know. I'm not into it, sorry guys, but we're soon going to get into records that I'm into. In fact, the next album I like a lot more. Okay, it's coming in at number 21, McCartney 2. Yeah, McCartney 2. Now, this came out in May 1980, and I remember when this came out. I distinctly remember, and I remember when the live version of Coming Up was all over the radio, and I loved that song. In fact, I still love that, and I love that version. I was a bit disappointed when I heard the studio version for the first time, but I've since warmed up to it. In fact, my favorite section of the album is maybe the first 4 or 5 tracks, Waterfall and Coming Up, and, those first 4 tracks, Temporary Secretary, which is all the rage these days. But that first section of the album is really great. I feel like the album kind of starts going like this as it goes on. Like side 2 is almost kind of a wash. I mean, I'll listen to it and like it okay, but there aren't really any standout tracks that I'm really into on side 2. It's definitely, well, kind of slipshod, to use that word again. But what are my notes here? I wrote some notes on this. This is McCartney's second one-man band solo album. He did it in summer of 1979 at his place in Scotland, and it wasn't necessarily meant to be an album, which is kind of like when he did McCartney 3. It wasn't necessarily something he recorded meaning it to be the next McCartney record. He was just messing around with some tracks. But then, of course, the whole Wings tour of Japan thing happened with Paul got busted, and then that tour got canceled. McCartney got thrown in the Who's Gow and stuff, and that basically threw everything into a tailspin. And then when Paul got out, he decided to put this out as the next album and put Wings on ice for a while. But of course, John Lennon was inspired to come out of retirement when he heard Coming Up, which I could see why. It's a great track. But in the end, as much as I like some of it, I just much prefer all the albums that I have above it. I don't know, but it's I don't fault this record for anything that I don't like about it. I mean, this record isn't something that's supposed to be taken that seriously. I mean, this isn't like one of his great artistic statements, or is meant to be. It's just him kind of having fun at home, right? Just like the first McCartney, and just like McCartney 3. But in the end, I only have it at 21. Okay, it's coming in number 20. Press to Play. Yeah, this came out in August 1986, and I remember when this record came out, and Paul seemed so past it, and in a lot of ways he kind of was. Now this is his most overtly 80s album, which should make this record go a lot lower on the list for me personally, because I'm not that much of an 80s guy, but I actually prefer this over the later 80s records and the early 90s records. I think maybe I got this record at the time. I didn't buy it. It was a record that I got for free because I knew the people at one of the record stores in town, and they would give me promos all the time, and they got a promo of this record, and they gave it to me. So I took it home and I gave it a listen, and there's some tracks I really like on it. I mean, I kind of liked it quite a bit at that time. I mean, it was 1986. I had the benefit of it being 1986 and me listening with 1986 ears. So if I were to go back and listen to it now for the first time, I probably would like it a lot less. But I always really liked Stranglehold, the opening track, and Good Times Come and Feel the Sunshine. My least favorite, though, I can't stand Pretty Little Head and Press, the really, kind of 80s tracks. I mean, I think this is overall generally kind of considered one of McCartney's lesser albums, and so this probably isn't really that controversial or pick, having this really low. And in fact, at the time when he was making the record, I mean, I read in the Howard Soons book Fab, where there's a story where when he was making this record, what was it, the engineer or whoever it was, kind of got real with him for a moment and kind of said, the the material isn't really up to par, is it? And Paul says, "Oh yeah? Well, how many number ones have you had?" And it's like, well, well, I don't think one needs to have number ones to be able to hear a shit song, but whatever. But that said, I don't think really that the songs are that bad on this record. It's not really a bad collection of songs. It's just it's just a 1986 album. It sounds like a 1986 album. It has that production that makes it just sound like everything else that came out that year. You take McCartney's voice out of it and get it down just to the backing tracks, and it could be anybody. So, that's one of the problems with the records from this period. Anyway, okay, so coming to number 19, London Town. Now we're getting into the definitely records that I like. From here on out, I like the records. I may like other albums more, but I really am not going to be so negative about the albums from here on out. Now, I remember this came out in March 1978, and I remember the day it came out because I remember that on release date, the local, rock radio station played the album in its entirety. And I knew, okay, on this Tuesday, the new McCartney album is going to be out, and they're going to play it out. They're going to be playing it on the radio. So I made sure to tune in, and I sat and I listened to this album all the way through the day it came out on the radio. And I wasn't that impressed by it. I mean, I was only 8, but it was just kind of like, I think I got part of the way through it, and I just kind of started going, oh yeah, isn't Mork and Mindy on or something? Maybe I should go watch TV. I don't know, but it just wasn't really grabbing me. I really liked With Little Luck, the big hit single at the time, but overall, the record just didn't grab me, at least on first listen, and I didn't buy it at the time. It was a record that I listened to that day on the radio that night, and then I didn't listen to it outside of whatever was on the radio again for a long time. And then when I ended up getting it a little later, I ended up really starting to like it. I mean, there's actually quite a few songs that I like on this record. I mean, most of this record, really. I mean, all of side one. I am not big on Children, but outside of that, side one is solid. I mean, London Town I like. Cafe on the Left Bank is great. I'm Carrying, Backwards Traveler, Girlfriend. I've Had Enough. Oh man, I've Had Enough might be my favorite song on this record. With Little Luck, Famous Groupies, Deliver Your Children, Name and Address. This is a good record. I mean, I think this is one of those records that was always considered one of his lesser albums, and I think this is another one of those albums where somebody, from what I've read, commented at the time that it wasn't really one of his best, and McCartney, of course, got bitchy about it. But honestly, I feel like this album's aged pretty well. This is one of those albums that I think probably wasn't highly regarded at the time, because in the 70s it wasn't in fashion to like McCartney. It was in fashion in the 70s to not like him, because he broke up the Beatles, and so whatever, and he'd kind of gone all soft, hadn't he? But man, I think in the long run, I think when the dust has settled, this album has aged really well. I like it a lot. I only have it at number 19, but that's because Paul McCartney has a lot of really great albums. And that's all there is to that. Okay, so coming to number 18, Run, Devil, Run. Yeah, now this came out in October 1999, and this is his first record after Linda died. Obviously she died in 1998, and he took a year off, as well he should have. And then finally he decided to kind of dip his toe back in the water and made this album of covers, although he does have 3 really great original tracks on this album, but this is just him doing some 50s and early 60s covers and just going in there and just ripping it out live in the studio, and just screaming his ass off and just working out those, just working it out, and his voice still sounds great. At the time I remember thinking that it sounded like he was starting to sound a little older, but compared to where he is now, you go back and listen to this, he sounds fantastic. But I mean, yeah, he has 3 excellent originals. I mean, What It Is. Oh man, what a song! Try Not to Cry, and the title track. My least favorite track is Brown Eyed Handsome Man, which I don't know. I just don't like that track that much. But overall, I think this album, even all the covers, and I'm not that big on covers albums generally, but I think just everything about the vibe and the sound and the energy and just the everything about this record, there's this great visceral kind of just vibe to it that I just think really carries it over. This album is just so much better even than I expected it to be at the time, and it stands the test of time. Great record. Run Devil Run. Okay, it's coming in number 17. Tug of War. Yeah, I know this is controversially low. You're probably going, what the yeah, well, for me personally, I find this album a little overrated. I like it, but I think I just don't love it as much as most people do. But this is a good album. This came out in April 1982, and when Paul started to record this album, John Lennon was still alive. But then, of course, after a month or two of working on it, John got killed. And when John got killed, Paul pulled the plug on everything. Every little project he had going on, boom, nothing. And so, and then he was kind of out of commission for a few months. And then in February 81, he kind of started up again, and he finished the record. Now, of course, this was his reunion with George Martin. And I think between the fact that it was McCartney's first release after John was killed, and it was his first true full album reunion with George Martin since the Beatles had broken up, people were really interested. I remember people were really interested in this record when it came out. I remember seeing on the news that the record was about to come out and everything. Like, it was a big deal, and everybody loved it immediately. It had big hits on it. It had Ebony and Ivory, and it had Take It Away. Now, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good tracks on this record. I mean, I do like the opener, the title track, Take It Away. Easily my favorite 80s Paul McCartney song, and my favorite on this record. Somebody Who Cares is great. What's That You're Doing with Stevie Wonder is good. Here Today, I mean, side 1 is solid. Side 2 is pretty good. I mean, Ballroom Dancing, I could kind of hear that. Like, if the Beatles had reunited in the early 80s and made an album, I could imagine that track being on a new Beatles album. Pound is Sinking, also kind of, quirky in that Beatles sort of way, innit? Yeah, Wanderlust, I don't like Get It. Get It is my least favorite on this record, easily, but Dress Me Up as a Robber, actually quite a bit. Ebony and Ivory, I loved in 1982. Loved that song. I had the picture sleeve single, the picture of Paul McCartney standing there, with a little inserted photo of Stevie Wonder. I took that picture sleeve single to the barber one day when I was 12, when that record was new, and said, I want this haircut. Yeah, so I tried to get the Paul McCartney on the cover of the Ebony and Ivory single haircut. Didn't quite work out. But anyway, yeah, so I may think that this album is a little overrated, but that doesn't mean I don't think the album is really good. I mean, I do think this is a really great album, and number 17, Tug of War. Okay, it's coming in number 16, Pipes of Peace. Yes, I have Pipes of Peace above Tug of War. Yeah, well, see, now, just as I think Tug of War is just a little overrated, I think this album is underrated. Yeah, I feel like everybody's really harsh in this record. I mean, it's basically Tug of War Part 2, of course, and a lot of the stuff are just leftovers from Tug of War. A few songs that were recorded anew, but some of them are actually from the Tug of War sessions. And I understand that means that they were songs that weren't considered good enough to be on Tug of War, but I don't know, I like this stuff. It came out in October 1983, and I didn't, I wasn't much into it at the time, but it was 1983. Not much stuff that was coming out in 1983 was my bag, man. I didn't travel well through the 80s. Let's just put it that way. But there's so many good things on it. Like Paul McCartney is in with Michael Jackson here. We have Say Say Say. What a great single. So Bad. I don't know. I think people probably don't really like that song. I love So Bad. I think So Bad is a great track. The Man. Oh, man. Keep Undercover. What a great track. Sweetest Little Show. I really like a lot of this record. I mean, all of Side 1. Well, Side 1 is pretty solid. I don't like The Other Me that much. I acted like a dustbin lid. It's kind of... But for the most part, I think this is a really good, underrated album. I enjoy this album. I have to say I actually enjoy it a little bit more than Tug of War. Pipes of Peace. Okay, it's coming in number 15, Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. Yeah. Now, this came out in September 2005, produced by Nigel Godrich, who produced Radiohead and Beck albums. And it's the first time in a while McCartney really had a producer in who really kind of just truly produced him said, nope, I don't like that song. What about that one? Whatever. Do you have anything better? What about this? And McCartney kind of was taken aback. But, Nigel really kind of brought the best out in McCartney and really took him into places that he would not have gone on his own. Now, this is a very controversial, I'm sure, placement I have for this record. I have it merely at number 15. I'm sure people are probably going, what? I think most people really love this record and would have it much higher on their list. I have a very complicated relationship with this record. I really love all the late period McCartney albums, most of them. I really, really think he's been making a lot of great records over the last however many years, last 25 years or so. And for some reason, I don't love this one as much as I should. I do like it. Whenever I think of this record, I think, I don't really like that one. It's really overrated. But then when I go back to it, and I always do, I go back to it and I go through it and I realize I like every song on the record. There isn't one bad song. I mean, some of the albums that I like way more have songs that I don't like at all. There isn't a bad song on this record. There's just something about it overall that doesn't... I can't even explain it. I just, for some reason, I have this block between me and Chaos and Creation. But I go through it, and every song's good. I don't know. It's just like, my heart is here, and the record is here, and something's standing right in the middle, and I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is, because this is a good record. This is a great record. I mean, let me go over the songs here. I mean, Fine Line. At first, I didn't really like Fine Line that much, but over time, I really liked that one a lot. I mean, How Kind of You, I think, was one of my favorites right away. I really liked that one. Jenny Wren, which, of course, is a very White Album kind of track. And At the Mercy is a really cool kind of mid-tempo piano-driven sort of track. Friends to Go, kind of an upbeat, sort of jolly, Paul Thumbs Aloft kind of song. English Tea, I mean, that's like straight up 60s whimsy right there, right? That could have been a Beatles track easily. Too Much Rain, one of the lesser tracks on the record for me personally, but it's good, it's not a bad track. A Certain Softness, very kind of, slow and ballady and kind of little, what's the word I'm looking for? Dramatic, maybe just a little dramatic, but in an easy sort of way. Riding to Vanity Fair, one of his long tracks. Follow Me, Promise to You Girl is a really great, like, upbeat song, kind of almost in the kind of same rhythmic vein as Fine Line, but yeah, this never happened before. Yeah, great songs, but you know what? I really love the B-sides. Honestly, the B-sides hit me right away. I actually like the B-sides, and there's like 5 or 6 of them, right? There's a Japanese bonus track, a couple of single B-sides, and all that kind of stuff. All that extra material, I kind of like that stuff more than I like the record. And I like the record. So I really actually hope he puts out one of his McCartney Archive series editions of Chaos and Creation and adds all those extra tracks. Because I think it's going to be, I think it would be really stellar, actually. And it could go a long way to make me get even more into the record. I don't know. We'll see. But only at number 15. But this is a McCartney list, so as you know, there's a lot of really great records that I have above this. So, it's coming to number 14, Egypt Station. Yeah, Egypt Station is, it's his 2018 album. This came out, September 2018. And I think this is a great album. I think generally, everything that McCartney has done since after the Beatles anthology, meaning from Flaming Pie and after, I think he's been completely on point. Now, you could go to his records and you may think, okay, well, I don't necessarily like, the vibe or the sound of this record or the direction he went in here or whatever, but he's not phoning in any of this stuff. Like, every one of these records, like, he's going in and he means it. Like, he's going in there doing the best that he can do, and in many cases, really making great records. His voice has gotten progressively worse, as I've mentioned, as we all know, but I mean, like, he's really, I think he's basically just had this late period sort of renaissance that has lasted for decades at this point. I mean, since the mid-90s we're talking here. Now, this record, is a bit spotty for me, but there's a lot of songs on it. I mean, there's easily a 10, 11, maybe 12 track album, a solid 10 or 11 track album amongst these tracks for me. Like I said, his voice is a bit of an issue. I mean, the opening track, the opening song, really, I Don't Know. Man, what a song. I think that's an absolutely amazing song. I think that song is beautiful. It would be a really amazing track if it had been on one of his mid-70s albums. I mean, could you imagine that song with Paul's mid-70s voice? That's just it. I mean, listen to that song and imagine mid-70s Paul's voice on that track. It would be a classic. I mean, I still think it's a great song, but it's a bit marred, by technical stuff, you know what I'm saying? But, I mean, there's so many great tracks on it. I mean, Back to Brazil, with that straw in the shake cup kind of kind of sound. I think a lot of people don't like that track. I love that track. Who Cares is a great, just like straight ahead kind of rock track. Despite Repeated Warnings and Hunt You Down / Naked / C-Link are two great, Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey, Band on the Run, side 2 of Abbey Road, medley at the end of Red Rose Speedway type tracks where he has all these different song parts that he crammed together and make one long sort of track out of it. And I think both of them are great. Absolutely great. The final track, the last of the two, there's their little Pink Floyd. Like it starts to sound like Pink Floyd towards the end. I mean, it sounds like it's Dave Gilmour in there, and it's some late 70s Pink Floyd. Great stuff. And that's just it, man. Paul is just he's given it his best. He is, like I said, he is not phoning this stuff in. He is not fucking around. He's doing the best that he can do. Maybe you don't like some of it, maybe you do, but man, Paul is putting his best foot forward, and I salute him at this late of the game, at this late stage of the game, to have that kind of creative drive. I mean, who else has that? Certainly not Kiss. But anyway, I digress. Egypt Station. Okay, it's coming in number 13. New. Yeah, this came out in October 2013, and man, I think this is a great album. I remember buying this the day it came out, as I tend to do with McCartney albums, or have for quite some time now, and I was immediately happy with the record. I mean, I remember when it was pending, when it had like a month or two to go before it came out, I started noticing here around town in New York City, there were these stenciled New logos on the street. Somebody went around town and just like stenciled the New logo everywhere. You'd be walking across the street somewhere in Greenwich Village, and you look down, and it would just be right there in the street. They were all over the place. It was actually really cool. But let me look at the tracks here. There's just so many great tracks on this record. A couple tracks I don't like as much, but this is mostly tracks that I really love. I mean, I think Save Us, what a great, just straight ahead rock track. It's like a modern rock track, but it's a really great, almost maybe a little bit of an 80s touch, but like that modern hipster sort of take on 80s, but it's really great. I think Save Us is a great track. Alligator, Queenie Eye, of course, gets back to that whimsical British kind of thing. New, the title track, that's of course the track that came out ahead of the album, and I think that's one of the best tracks on the record. There's so many really good tracks on this record, but that is a really great simple pop single from a really great late Paul McCartney album. Appreciate. Now, Appreciate is one of the most overtly modern sounding tracks on this record, which should mean that I would hate it. Easily one of my favorite songs on this record. It has such a cool vibe, and it's a little electronic, but it really has a floaty vibe to it that I really like a lot. Everybody Out There, also kind of upbeat and kind of floaty at the same time. It has kind of distant reverb vocals. Hosanna, I Can Bet. What a great track that is. It just has this really cool, really, it has this really cool sort of rhythm to it, this sort of driving sort of vibe to it with the electric piano. Really great track. Looking at Her, Road, so many great tracks on this record. Now, On My Way to Work, I don't really like very much. That's one of the ones I don't like. And what was the other one? I don't have it listed here. Whatever. New is a great record. Now, if anybody who hasn't really listened to the more recent McCartney albums, anything, anybody who gave up on him, in 1978 or in 1983 or whatever, go listen to some of these later records. I promise you, you're going to be surprised. There's some really great stuff going on. There's really great stuff happening. I think after the anthology, Paul kind of tapped into his Beatles muse again. After he did that, he kind of went, oh, yeah, that's how you do this. And I think he's been on a roll ever since. I've already said that. I'm saying it now, and I'm going to say it again, because we'll be talking about other records from that period. But yeah, New. Really, really solid record. Okay, it's coming in number 12, Wings Wildlife. Yes, I have Wings Wildlife above Chaos and Creation. Now, objectively, I'm going to give you this. Objectively, Chaos and Creation is 1,000 times better album than Wings Wildlife. But I just enjoy Wildlife more. Part of it is that it's 70s and it has that 70s sound and vibe, that warm 70s sound. That wins almost every time. But really also, I like most of the songs on this record. There are really only 2 songs that I don't like on the record, and that is the reggae cover of Love Is Strange and I Am Your Singer. Those are all the other songs on this album I like. I love Mumbo. I like Bip Bop. I don't love it. Really, the only problem with that song is that it's too long. It's like 4 minutes long, 4.5 minutes of a song that should be maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes long. It should be like a link track. If that song was not even half the length, no problem. Wildlife, the title track, great track. Some People Never Know, one of my very favorites on the record. Also a bit long. It's over 6 minutes long. I really wish there was a single edit of this track. I think it would be. It needs it really bad. There's a lot of fat there. It just really needs to be a lot shorter. But I really, really love the track, and it's really kind of the first truly Wingsy sounding track, I think, really. And Linda really, really helps along this song, and her backing vocals are really a huge part of the sound. I don't like I'm Your Singer, which I mentioned. Tomorrow, what a track that is. It's a great track, and it's probably the most fully realized and fully produced track on the record. David Cassidy, on his 76 album, I think, Home Is Where the Heart Is that right? Is it that album? One of his mid-70s albums on RCA. He does a really great cover of Tomorrow. I recommend looking up. I'm a big fan of it. But, of course, the McCartney track always wins. And Dear Friend, Paul reaching out to John. Dear Friend, what a track that is. I mean, there are a lot of really great songs on this record. I think people tend to look at it unfavorably because it starts out, and really the front end of this record is what's really pretty kind of dodgy, don't you think? But even with that, I mean, Mumbo, it's a ballsy track to open up with, but I think it's really great. I think it's absolutely great. Just him just completely rocking out and doing his screaming Little Richard voice, but mumbling nonsense. Who else would have the nerve to do that but Paul McCartney? I think it kicks ass, personally. But yeah, anyway, I have it at number 12, Wings Wildlife. Okay, it's coming in number 11, McCartney. Yeah, the very first McCartney album, April 1970. This is the album that broke up the Beatles. I mean, really. I mean, they were already falling apart and they would have broken up anyway. I mean, but, everybody wants to say Yoko broke up the Beatles or this or that. This is the moment that the Beatles broke up really, truly, and without any looking back, was the release of this record. And, McCartney, of course, made it at home, on Cavendish. In Cavendish? How, you say in or on, whatever. Cavendish, his place in Cavendish in St. John's Wood, around the corner from Abbey Road Studios there. He just sat there while the Beatles were crumbling around him and made this record. And, it's very homemade and demo-y and, bits of sketches of instrumental this and that and little half-baked ideas or one-quarter baked ideas. Now, this album really would be much, much higher if it had more songs on it. I have a little bit of a problem with the fact that so much of it is just kind of throwaway kind of material, instrumental throwaway material. But I can't really overlook the fact that it has some amazing classics on it. I mean, this album has Maybe I'm Amazed on it. That alone, if this album only had Maybe I'm Amazed, if it was just Maybe I'm Amazed on a 12-inch record, it would be worth this placement. Actually, maybe it'd be worth. Actually, maybe it would be worth even higher placement. I don't know, but I mean, The Lovely Linda, whatever. I mean, it's kind of like a little 2-second thing at the beginning where he's singing about Linda, but That Would Be Something is a track that I would like much more if it was more realized. I kind of like it, but I feel like it's just just one tiny little sketch of an idea that really needs to be fleshed out and turned into something. I like that germ there, but it needs to be a song. Every Night. Now we're talking. Like, if the whole record was on the level of Every Night and Maybe I'm Amazed, come on. I mean, it would probably be near the top, if not the top. Junk, I think, is great. I think Junk is an underrated track. Man, We Was Lonely. I used to not like Man, We Was Lonely. I just kind of found it a little bit too weird and hokey at the same time, but it's really grown on to me. Ooh You, I like kind of a really kind of funky little, hard edge track to open up side 2. Teddy Boy, I can't stand. I can see why it kept getting ignored in the Get Back sessions. I'm glad it didn't make that record. I'm glad it wasn't on Abbey Road. Too bad it's on this record, but whatever. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, but yeah, Maybe I'm Amazed is not only my favorite song on this record, it's my favorite Paul McCartney song. Easily his favorite solo song, possibly my favorite overall. I mean, I have to think about it. I mean, there's stuff like Penny Lane, and I don't know. My least favorite is probably Karina Crore. That's the biggest head scratcher on an album full of head scratchers, or not even head scratchers, more like shruggers, really. But I don't know. It has enough really good stuff on it. Well, look how high I put it. But again, I put it that high based on the highlights, which are few, but those highlights are really high. So, well, there you go. Number 11, McCartney. Okay, it's coming in number 10. Red Rose Speedway. Yeah, this came out in April 1973, and it's the second Wings album. Came after Wings Wildlife, and it's kind of the first, properly produced Wings album, I guess. Most properly well thought out and arranged and produced Wings album. It's supposed to be a double album. I mean, they wrote and recorded a lot of tracks for this, and not only was it a double album, but then there's a bunch of tracks above and beyond that. I mean, the archive collection version of that album, there are so many bonus tracks. I mean, and there are a ton of them that I hadn't heard before, and like 1882, great track. But they had to pare it down to a single album because the label was kind of going, well, I don't know, a double album from McCartney at the time didn't really seem like a very good idea. I mean, his most recent releases hadn't exactly flown off the shelves. People weren't really liking Wings Wildlife, and his 72 singles were all pretty, I mean, Give Ireland Back to the Irish, Mary Had a Little Lamb. Come on. So yeah, they were kind of like, I don't know if you're quite, ready for a double album there, Paul. Let's give us a single. So they pared it down. And there's some good stuff on this record. I mean, it's a little bit of a weird record. I like it, but it does feel kind of like he's not doing his best. I don't know. It feels a little like he's kind of tossing it off a bit. I don't know, but at the same time, it's weird. It's almost like this has he's kind of lost it sort of feel. Like he just doesn't have that same sort of. It feels like he doesn't have the same knack for songwriting that he had before this. You know what I mean? But like Big Barn Bed isn't that great. But then My Love, boom, you get a glimpse of like top level Paul right there. I mean, that's like Beatles level Paul. In fact, it's my favorite song on the album. But Get on the Right Thing, Dark Horse track. That's a fantastic track. So I mean, me saying that it's probably not up to his usual standards. I mean, that's really just some of it, and the overall vibe of it does feel a little tepid. But there really are some great songs. My Love, Get on the Right Thing. One More Kiss is kind of like a country western track that sounds like a B-side, but I actually really like that song. Little Lamb Dragonfly, I find it a little unmemorable, and the la la la's are kind of, come on, this is what we've come to, Paul, la la's, but I like the song, okay, it's okay. Single Pitchin' could have been a Beatles track, I think. If the Beatles had made an album in 1973, this song could have been on it. When the Night, one of my favorites. I think When the Night is great. And, of course, there's the medley at the end. My least favorite track is Loop, First Indian on the Moon, but the medley at the end, he always has to do his Abbey Road medleys on these records, and yeah, that's pretty good too. But in the end, I'm always going to go back to My Love as my very favorite on this record, and it's good. I mean, I like it. I have it at number 10, don't I? Okay, so coming to number 9 is the album that has risen the most over time. There was a time when this would have been really low on the list, and it was not that long ago. I mean, literally even weeks ago. I definitely would have put it at the bottom of the Wings list, and I would have put it much, much further down on the overall list, but I've really found my spot. I think I've really found my way with this record, and now I have it all the way up at number 9. At last, after decades, I have finally found my way with Wings at the Speed of Sound. Yeah, Wings at the Speed of Sound at number 9. I used to think it was a terrible record. I love the singles. I love Let 'Em In. I love Let 'Em In. I love Silly Love Songs. I always liked Beware My Love and Time to Hide, but I just found it a really terribly weak album. I never really liked She's My Baby much. Cook of the House. I mean, come on. But as I've gone over it, I mean, this, The Note You Never Wrote, I wasn't that into that at first, but that's really, really grown on me. That's actually a really great track. In fact, side 1's pretty solid, except for the fact that I still think She's My Baby is just kind of okay. But I mean, Beware My Love, Why No Junko, great track. Side 2, Silly Love Songs, Time to Hide, great song. Must Do Something About It, great song. I kind of wish that Paul was singing it, because I kind of feel like it's a little too strong for Paul to have given away. But I really like the track. And, San Ferry Ann, Warm and Beautiful, okay. But yeah, really this album has really, 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 really grown on me. It's, it was one of the most blockbuster albums of the Wings period, really, and some of the most overplayed songs like Silly Love Song. But man, that bass line, have you ever actually listened to the bass line on Silly Love Songs? Okay, now remember that Paul McCartney is playing that bass line and he's singing it, right? So there you go. Wings at the Speed of Sound. Okay, so coming to number 8, Electric Arguments. Yeah, Electric Arguments is one of 3 albums billed as The Firemen. Paul McCartney and Youth were making basically these electronic records, and on the 3rd record, Youth and him kind of cooked up this idea where McCartney would come in, for a session without a song and just build something up, improvise and just build something up off the top of his head that day, and they would have one song that day, and then he'd come back for another session a couple months later, 6 months later, whatever it was, and do it again. And they just did this over and over and over again until they had a whole album worth of tracks. And really they ended up making a McCartney album. I mean, it's McCartney writing songs, playing all the instruments, and singing. And for the longest time, I kind of thought of Electric Arguments as McCartney 3, because really, it in a way, kind of is. I mean, McCartney 3 is McCartney 4, right? Yeah, Electric Arguments is really, truly the proper McCartney 3, and I think it's a lot better than McCartney 3, obviously, since I have it here at number 8. But man, I mean, just so much great stuff on this. It's very atmospheric and very, it's a bit trippy, man. But but it has a lot of different kinds of stuff, like a good, proper McCartney album should. It's varied. You don't know what the next song's going to sound like. Nothing too much, just out of sight, which of course is just him kind of doing a hardcore, like, blues screamer, right? Two Magpies, just one of his little White Album-ish kind of acoustic tracks. Sing the Changes, which is just like this really kind of dreamy, atmospheric, mid-tempo kind of song with, a lot of echo and reverb on the vocal. I love that track. Sing the Changes. And Two Magpies, Travelin' Light, trippy song with a bunch of, with mellotrons and everything. Great, beautiful track. Highway, Light from Your Lighthouse, Sun is Shining. I'd say this album is really great for the first maybe 10 songs, and then it starts to kind of go... Well, it kind of falls towards the end of the album. It kind of starts falling into sounding like a legitimate Fireman album and less like a Paul McCartney record, which, is okay. I mean, there's a good solid 10 tracks there of just great creative McCartney tracks. I mean, just McCartney just going for it. And yeah, this is an underrated record. This came out in 2008, November 2008. Did I say this already? And yeah, more people should know about this record. If you don't know about it, go listen to it. The Fireman, Electric Arguments, one of the most underrated Paul McCartney albums ever. All right, it's coming in number 7, Memory Almost Full. Man, I really love this record. I've always been a huge fan of this record. Now, this came out in June 2007, and I remember anticipating this record. I remember sitting in Union Square in Manhattan the night it came out. And I say night because right there in Union Square at the time, there was a Virgin Megastore that was 24 hours, which meant if it was Monday night, say 11 p.m. or whatever, if you hang around for another hour or whatever, after midnight, you could go into Virgin Megastore and get the new releases for the next day. And so that's what I did. I was hanging out at Union Square, and then after midnight, I went across the street to Virgin Megastore and picked up this album, and I got the deluxe one with the extra disc on it, with the extra songs, like 222 and Why So Sad or whatever. And what are the songs? Yeah, Why So Blue. But I was so into this record. It's definitely one of my very favorite of his late period albums. Now, see, the thing about it, though, is that it sounds terrible. It actually has some of the worst kind of brick-walled, like harsh, digital, ear, fatiguing sound. It sounds terrible, but the songs are great. I think it opens a little weak. I don't really like Dance Tonight that much. Ever Present Past, but with the third track, See Your Sunshine, that's when it kicks in. That's McCartney comes back with he comes back with his like Beatles bass. Yeah, like Beatle Paul on bass on that, and it's just amazing to hear. Only Mama Knows. What? It's like his modern day Junior's Farm, although with darker subject matter. But it's just like a great rocker, or like a great rocker. You Tell Me, Mr. Bellamy, Gratitude, Vintage Clothes, That Was Me. Probably my favorite track on the album is House of Wax. I used to sit there, I would sit there in Union Square with my iPod on and listen to this record, and I would just sit there at night with House of Wax playing, just like this epic, gorgeous epic track, with the way the kind of the rising ahs, right? Oh, great. I absolutely think it's a stunning track, and it's very underrated. And of course there's The End of the End. Oh man, Paul McCartney singing about his own death. I get emotional every single time I listen to that song. And yeah, this is one of my I have this record at number 7. I love this album so much. It's, yeah, I don't even know what to tell you, man. Memory Almost Full. Okay, it's coming in number 6. Boy, is this going to be a controversial pick. Most people usually have this at the bottom. I've looked at many McCartney ranking videos on YouTube, and invariably people have this record at the bottom. I have it at number 6. I love this record. Driving Rain. Yes, I have Driving Rain at number 6. I have always liked this record. I bought this record, like all these records, all these late period records, I bought it the day it came out, and it struck me immediately. I loved this record immediately. I really don't know what it is that people don't like about it. I keep going back to it, and over time, I find that it holds up. I still love it as much as I always did, but I also, when I go back to it, I also find myself scratching my head, going, what is it that people hate so much about this album? I can understand if you don't think it's that great, but like bottom of the list, like people really just think this is a crap album, and you're wrong. Boy, I think this is a great album. November 2001 this came out. The most underrated Paul McCartney album by far. I mean, I can understand why McCartney wouldn't really like it, because, let's face it, it's the Heather album. So at this point, he probably cringes at the thought of this record. And to a certain extent, it's also the 9/11 album. It has that god-awful Freedom at the end of it. I mean, there are a couple songs I don't like, that's for sure, and Freedom is certainly one of them. I've never even listened to that song all the way through. It's so awful. But the record overall, I mean, now people complain about the title track, Driving Rain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's go for a drive. Really? You kidding me? That track, that's Paul tapping into his Little Richard muse there. That's him tapping into his Little Richard thing. If that exact song was a Little Richard track, was a Little Richard song from 56, 57, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's go for a drive, you would think it was great. It would be considered a classic. Nobody would even begin to question it. But because it's late period, well, because it's post-Beatles Paul, then it's like some egregious sort of, what the fuck's he doing? Great track. Is it anything heavy or important or meaningful? No. It's just McCartney just kind of just tossing off something just fun and great, something visceral. But it really isn't that simple. It also has great chord changes, like these atmospheric chord changes that are definitely far beyond what would be in a Little Richard track. But, I mean, what else is in here? I mean, Lonely Road, okay opener, but From a Lover to a Friend? Are you kidding me? What a great track. Now, if that song was on Chaos, come on, people. Yeah, the part when he kind of goes into his falsetto. How can I walk when I can't find a way? Come on, people. That is amazing. She's Given Up Talking is kind of whimsical. Yeah, kind of, doing his McCartney whimsy thing. That's okay. I like it. Driving Rain, I love. I Do. Tiny Bubble. Dumb fun song that I just love, Magic. Oh, what a fucking beautiful song that is. About when he met Linda. Atmospheric, again, great chords and just a great feel. There's a little bit of I could imagine this being one of his 70s songs, and that's definitely one of the things I love about that track. You can't lose with a song being like a 70s type song. But Your Way, Spinning on Axis, About You, great rock track. Heather sucks. I don't like Heather, the song, and, well, yeah, what? Anyway, yeah, I don't like Heather, the song. Back in the Sunshine Again. Life's too short to spend it lonely. You only throw it away. Oh, come on, you kid. That part alone is so amazing, but the whole track is great. Your Loving Flame. Now, Riding to Jaipur, and Rinse the Raindrops, and Freedom. Those last three tracks, those don't have to be there. But there is a good 12 tracks there. I mean, like, there's a solid 12-track album within this. I don't know. I mean, I know people don't connect with this record. I do. I always have. And like I said, it stands the test of time for me. Driving Rain. Okay, it's coming in number 5. Flaming Pie. Oh, man, Flaming Pie. I mean, here's one we have in common. You and I both agree. This is a great album. This is the beginning of his late period renaissance. I mean, McCartney had just spent, 3 years or whatever working on the anthology, the Beatles anthology, and going through all those tracks and basically reliving the whole Beatles experience and hearing all that session stuff and everything. And I think it just kind of like woke him up. He went, oh shit. Okay. And suddenly it just like reawakened the old McCartney. And Flaming Pie, what a record. He got Jeff Lynne in to produce a bunch of the stuff. It came out in May 1997. And they just made... there are 2 tracks on this record I really don't like. I'll get to them in a moment. But overall, this is a stellar album. The song we were singing... That's the thing about these later albums. As much as I like them, I have a tendency not to be that heavily into the opening track on a lot of these records. The song we were singing, I like... but it's not one of my favorites on the album. But man, The World Tonight, If You Wanna, Some Days, Young Boy, it's just great song after great song. Calico Skies, he does a lot of his White Album-ish acoustic tracks on this. Flaming Pie, Heaven on a Sunday. Used to Be Bad is one of the songs I can't stand. Used to Be Bad is McCartney teaming up with Steve Miller to do a track, and I think it sucks. But Souvenir is probably my favorite track on the album. Little Willow, Really Love You is the other track I don't like. But Beautiful Night and Great Day. Oh man, Great Day. with Linda's backing vocals, it's like a Wings reunion. Linda's backing vocals are probably the most key thing to the Wings sound. Like the blend of Linda's voice and Paul's voice, that's where the Wings sound comes from. And it was so cool at the time to hear this song for the first time and hear what sounded like a new Wings track. And it's a great track, of course. I mean, a great song, of course. Yeah, this album, I can't say enough about it. If you haven't listened to any of the later McCartney, you gave up on him, after Pipes of Peace or something, get this album. Listen to it. You will not be disappointed. Flaming Pie. Okay, so coming in number 4, Back to the Egg. Yeah, Back to the Egg. June 1979's Back to the Egg. Man, I remember when this record came out. I had my friends Saul and Caesar. I talk about them on my audio podcast. I talk about them a lot. They come up here and there on the videos. But yeah, Saul and Caesar were these older brother kind of types of friends that I had. They were older than I was, and they were music friends. And I remember when this record came out, I remember Saul had the Back to the Egg cassette, and he had his boombox, and we're talking 1979, and I remember him playing Arrow Through Me in the backyard, and that was sort of my introduction to the existence of this record. And I always really loved that song. It wasn't as big of a hit, I think, as it should have been. But this album is really underrated. Now, admittedly, as I'm sitting here talking about it and thinking about it, I realize I should have put Flaming Pie above it. But whatever. So kind of, okay, technically I have Flaming Pie above it, but I'm going to talk about this now anyway. But this record, I mean, this was McCartney trying to get edgier after the kind of limp London Town. I love London Town, but the overall sound and vibe of it is pretty, kind of limp. But so he's trying, and Punk had come in and kind of taken over, and I think he decided he was going to get a bit edgy, he could rock with the best of them, couldn't he? And he made a great record. I mean, what happened? Getting Closer is one of my favorite McCartney tracks. What an opener. Underrated. We're Open Tonight, kind of a Linkish kind of track. Spin It On, Again and Again, not a favorite, but Old Siam Sir, Arrow Through Me, To You, Winter Rose, and Love Awake. So Glad to See You Here. Baby's Request. This is a really great album. I think this album tends to get overlooked, and especially it did at the time, because back in the late 70s, it was throughout the 70s, it was pretty in to be anti-Paul because he broke up the Beatles, right? And I had friends who were older than I was, friends who had been in high school in the 70s, and they all had a chip on their shoulder about Paul. Every time you talked, you talk about albums like this, and they would kind of like, Back to the Egg. So when I finally got my own copy and brought it home and listened to it, I kind of was expecting it to be not that great. I was blown away. And, all these years later, here it is at number 4 on my list, even though it really should be number 5 below Flaming Pie. Anyway, Back to the Egg. Okay, so coming in number 3, Band on the Run. Yeah, Band on the Run. I only have it at number 3. Well, it's because I have some really great albums above it, but Band on the Run is also a great album. It's obviously a stone cold classic, and really this is his breakthrough album. I mean, this is the moment where not only did he finally come back to being really as great as we all knew that he could be, he's at Beatles level on this record. And but the critics were back with him. I mean, even John thought this was a great record. I mean, everybody was back on with McCartney, at least for a moment, when he made this record. I talked when I was talking about Back to the Egg, I was talking about how it was in the 70s to kind of be anti-McCartney because everybody saw him as the one who broke up the Beatles. But I think if there was a moment in the 70s where everybody was on his side, this would be it. And it's a great album. Now, I have to say, for me, I think the reason why it's at number 3 instead of number 1 is because I feel like only side 1 really lives up to the reputation this record has. I like side 2, but I only think side 2 is as good as maybe Red Rose Speedway. Side 1 is McCartney's most perfect album side. As a matter of fact, that's one of the most perfect album sides in the history of popular music. I mean, there are Beatles albums that have sides that aren't as good as side 1 of Band on the Run. I mean, come on. Let's look at it. The title track, Band on the Run. right there. Could you imagine if the Beatles had gotten back together in 1973 and these are the songs that Paul had? Band on the Run, Jet, Bluebird. Bluebird is one of my very favorites. Mrs. Vanderbilt and Let Me Roll It. That is an absolutely perfect album side. Perfect. Every single song, A+ level. Side 2, I like these songs, but I just don't think they're even half as good as the songs. I mean, Mamunia. I mean, come on, Mamunia is a good song, but it isn't even half as good as anything on side 1. No Words. I really like that track, but again, not even half as good as anything on side 1. Picasso's Last Words. It's okay. 1985 is the only track on side 2 that lives up to what is happening on side 1. 1985 is a stellar track. And, Hell on Wheels, which is on the American version, I think that song sucks. But, I mean, I'm not going to dock it for that track because it was just an add-on. McCartney himself didn't intend that song to be on the album, so, But, yeah, I mean, obviously this is the whole thing where they went to Lagos. They went to Africa to record and basically had one mishap after another. And in the end, McCartney made what is, most people would consider this his best album. I only have it at number 3, and I remember when this album was new. I remember all these songs being on the radio, and we had a copy of the album in the apartment, but I don't know where it came from because my mom didn't buy it. It wasn't mine. It just kind of appeared one day. But I remember I listened to this album all the time. I pulled the poster out of it and had it on my wall in my room. And I feel lucky to have been aware of and have a copy of this album when it was current. I mean, what an album. What an album. Band on the Run. All right, so coming in number 2 is the album All of You Have at number 1. Yes, that's right. I have Ram at number 2. Ram. Yeah, now this came out in May 1971, and I love this album. I absolutely love it, completely love it. Obviously, I have it at number 2, so I must really love it, but there's one album I love a little bit more. But we'll get to that in a minute. Now, this is billed as a Paul and Linda McCartney album, with half the songs were co-written, are credited to having been co-written by Linda, and that's because, Paul needed a little cash. All of his royalties were frozen, and he didn't have any income. And if he claimed that Linda wrote half the song, then at least money for half the money for the tracks would start coming into Linda, which meant he also had money. So yeah, it was a little bit of business sleight of hand on Paul's part, but he had to do what he had to do in the situation he was in. So, really, that's the only reason why she gets co-billing with him and co-writing credit and the whole thing. It's a Paul McCartney record. And what a record it is. I mean, at the time, it wasn't highly regarded. That's the thing. People kind of forget. Like, everybody loves Ram now. Everybody loves Ram now. It's just, everybody loves this thing. But nobody really, I guess it charted high, but everybody seemed to kind of, oh, Ram, that album. Yeah, it's just like the critics hated it. The word on the street was just that McCartney had lost it. And time has been very kind to this record. I mean, it's one of those records that just gets better and better over time, and more people discover it. But I think that's because the people who have discovered it since then have discovered it minus any of the baggage of that period of time. That's really the problem with the problem that the album faced at the time was just the baggage that surrounded him at that time. It's nothing to do with the quality of the record. The album is fantastic. I mean, now I remember buying this record, like a cheap used copy of it for $3 or something, sometime in the 80s, and not expecting much from it because, again, like Back to the Ache, this is one of those albums where people are like, that record. And I was blown away when I heard it. Too Many People, Three Legs, Ram On, Dear Boy, Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey, of course, Smile Away, Heart of the Country, Monkberry Moon Delight, Eat at Home, and The Backseat of My Car. I mean, I don't really like Long-Haired Lady all that much, but other than that, I mean, this is easily one of the best Beatles solo albums, bar none. And I have it at number 2. Number 2. Okay, so coming in number 1, those of you who've been following along and know the discography, you know which album I haven't talked about yet. Yep. Venus and Mars. Yes, Venus and Mars is my favorite McCartney album, bar none. Even over Ram, even over Band on the Run. And I make no apologies for that, do I? No, I don't. Now, this record came out in May 1975. Lennon was supposed to be involved. Paul and John had really started to become friendly again, and they were hanging out in L.A. when John was on his Lost Weekend there, and Paul and John and Ringo and Nilsson and and Keith Moon and everybody would hang out and do drugs and party and get drunk or whatever and fuck around. And McCartney was getting set to go to New Orleans to record this album, and Lennon was gonna go meet up with him, maybe write with him, maybe appear on the record, who knows. But then, of course, John reunited with Yoko, and that was off. What could have been. But just the same, what happened was McCartney made what is my personal favorite McCartney album. I mean, I knew most of these songs first through Wings Over America, because when that record came out, I was obsessed with it. Wings Over America, I mean, I got that album right away, and yeah, that was probably my favorite McCartney album in the 70s. I was obsessed with that record. But now, and the earliest McCartney album that I was aware of when it was current was Band on the Run. Somehow, I skipped past this one. I didn't know about this album when it came out. I mean, obviously, Listen to What the Man Said on the radio all the time, and I love that song, but I guess I just wasn't aware of Venus and Mars as an album. But when I did get that record, I was very, very pleasantly surprised. It's a really bizarre sounding album. You know what I mean? I feel like I feel like he's trying to make it sound like the radio. It kind of sounds like he's trying to make the record sound like it's on the radio. It's really compressed. It has a really bizarre sound to it. But the songs on it, I mean, Venus and Mars Rock Show, obviously an epic, Madison Square Garden opening track. Lovin' Song, a great ballad. You Gave Me the Answer, one of Paul's, wacky little Beatle-y kind of songs, but it's great. Magneto and Titanium Man, Letting Go, what a track that is. Letting Go is one of my favorite McCartney tracks. Spirits of Ancient Egypt and Medicine Jar, Call Me Back Again. Oh, Jesus, Call Me Back Again is a smoking track, and it's even better on Wings Over America. But in the end, my favorite song on the album has got to be Listen to What the Man Said. Everything about that song I love. I mean, it's one of those songs that it seems timeless on one hand, but on the other hand, it takes me back to when I was 5 or 6, and it's a song that'll stop me in my tracks. If it comes on, I have to stop and I have to listen to it. Listen to What the Man Said. Now, the last 3 tracks, or the last 2 or 3, the Treat Her Gently, Lonely Old People / Crossroads theme stretch at the end after Listen to What the Man Said, not really that big on that. But, I mean, that's really just kind of at the tail end of the record. The main body of the record is, song for song, my favorite McCartney album. And it's been that way for years. I mean, this album there's been no cracks in the armor of this album for me for decades now. It's still going strong. And I don't know. Where would you guys have this album? Where would you guys put this album in your ranking? This is one of those albums that I always assume people don't regard that highly. I think it's just like this idea that I have in my head that people are going to kind of like go, Jesus, you like that record? But I'm finding that a lot of people actually really do like it. I think maybe this is one of those albums that probably wasn't loved that much in its day, but has kind of grown over time, kind of like Ram, although not as much as Ram. But for me, it's the pinnacle of McCartney's post-Beatles output. As an album. I mean, obviously, certain individual songs, like Maybe I'm Amazed, I would put above anything on this record. But as an album, this is my number 1. Alright, well, there you go. That is my ranking of the Paul McCartney albums. And happy birthday, Paul. Paul McCartney is 80 years old. I mean, Paul McCartney has been a part of my life for my entire life. I got into music because of because of the Beatles' second album. The Beatles' second album the U.S. release of the Beatles' second album, is the first record I ever heard and never fell in love with. And Paul McCartney is part of that. And of course, Paul McCartney had a lot of current stuff on the radio that I really loved. But yeah, I mean, and this is, we're talking when I was like 3 years old, okay, if not earlier. So Paul McCartney has been, he sowed seeds of my love of music and has been a part of my life for my entire life. And here we are, man. A lifetime of records, of music, and of memories and all that kind of stuff. You know, some great, some okay, some shitty, but so much stuff. So, you know, the long and winding road and all that kind of stuff. But here we are, man. Paul McCartney is 80. I hope he makes it to 100. His voice already sounds like he's 100 at this point, but man, I don't even want to think about the day when Paul McCartney dies. I don't even want to talk about it. Anyway, so thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for getting through this long video. This is one of my longer videos, but it had to be done. And thank you to everybody who subscribes. But if you're not a subscriber, subscribe. And if you do subscribe, click the little bell because you're going to want notifications. And like and comment and everything. Let me know what your McCartney list is. What are your favorite? Well, you know, rank the whole damn discography and put it down below in the comments and let me know. And you know, you can send me comments telling me how stupid I am for putting Flowers in the Dirt so low, or Driving Rain so high, or not putting Ram at number 1. But whatever. Keep in mind, like I said at the beginning of the video, this is just my heart speaking, man. I'm not necessarily saying, you know, that Wings Wildlife is a better album than Chaos and Creation. I just enjoy it more. That's all. Anyway, so that is that. I will be seeing you guys next week, and thank you for watching. See you next time.